Welcome back. In 1965, the Georgia legislature passed the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Act with the goal to create a network of rail, bus, and parks and ride facilities. After 7 years of legislative wrangling, MARTA got the system fully operating, and in 1979 pushed its first train of passengers from Avondale to Georgia State University. Now, MARTA transports just under 500,000 people daily and ranks as one of the top 10 transit agencies in the country. Today, Ed Baker talks to MARTA General Manager and CEO Keith Parker about what's to come and keeping the agency on track in this edition of Executive Profiles.
Let's start out with a young man in Virginia before you even go off to school. Was transportation kind of always in your head? Did you play with trains? Are you a boats and a planes kind of a guy?
No, more it was, I knew I wanted to be in charge of something. So I went into college mostly thinking I would be an attorney, but quickly found out once I started to explore in that realm that it wasn't really for me. Instead, I wanted to quickly, as fast as possible, be in charge of something that made a real difference. And I looked in city management and ultimately took an internship working for the city of Richmond as an intern. In fact, at the same time was an intern for the Greater Richmond Transit Company, which was one of the best known mid-sized transit operations in the nation, and decided that I liked both of those realms and wanted to do everything I could to move up as fast as possible and do something that, again, made a difference.
So academically, you were a star. I know very few people who have 2 master's degrees. University of Richmond Spider?
I am a Spider, and also a VCU Ram, so I like both schools. But no, I never would consider myself an academic star. I always viewed education as a way to get the job that I really wanted. When I recruit people and talk to them, I don't necessarily want the person who's the absolute smartest about everything. Instead, I want the person smart enough to get enough information to make a good decision.
You know, you've moved around and grown your career, and you've been in some pretty interesting markets, growth markets, San Antonio and Charlotte. Why on earth did you take this job?
Atlanta offered two things. The first one was we're East Coast people. You know, I'm from Virginia. I'll always be a Virginian, like Georgia, but I'll always be a Virginian. And it gave us an opportunity to get a little bit closer while taking on what I view as the most difficult public transit assignment in the country. And I get the question thrown back at me, well, why would you say that? It's not New York, it's not Philadelphia. Those systems are bigger. But the difference between New York, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, in terms of public transportation is that everybody believes in it. Even if you don't use it, you know that without a viable mass transit system in those larger cities, that traffic will only get worse, the environment will only get worse, and that you need it to be a truly competitive economic market from an international perspective. In Atlanta, there's still people where the jury's out. Is mass transit even worth the 1 penny of sales tax that's collected in Fulton and DeKalb counties? And so that fact, plus the reality that MARTA is in a pretty tough situation.
Are you surprised in terms of what you've seen?
Yes, some pleasant surprises and some daunting ones. Certainly we took a look before I came here in looking at the finances of the agency. But I had no idea just the depths of how much trouble the agency was in terms of the increasing cost, decreasing revenues, and the prospect for expansion being almost nil. There's this belief that you can just continue to build more and more roads and make them wider and take them and keep suburbanization going further and further and further out, and you can come up with a meaningful way to lessen commutes and so on. There's this whole notion of people like me don't use mass transit. They've eliminated that notion in most cities in the north and northeast, and even on the west coast. That's gone away in large part. But it's not completely gone here in the south. So I think you add all those elements together, then you have people who are real resistant to mass transit.
What are you most proud of so far?
MARTA has only balanced the budget twice in the last 15 years, and now we're going strong 2 years in a row. Secondly, I like the Ride with Respect campaign that we said we'd do, and that's where we are really going after the anti-social, anti-civil behavior. And then the third one is probably the one that's most important, and I want people to feel proud to come to work for MARTA every day. And as we balance budgets and we turn our revenue around and we get people feeling better about the system, our employees, I think, will more and more begin to stick their chest out about being part of a winning system. They will stamp out inefficiencies and that sort of thing. So most importantly, if we can get people feeling great about what they do for a living on a daily basis, I think that translates into really positive results for MARTA.
Paint a realistic future over the next 3 to 5 years. How much progress can we truly make?
Well, I think my goal, or my job really, is to make MARTA the most efficient transit system that we can possibly bring forward. And with that, also to communicate that we are doing a good job handling the resources that have been entrusted to us. We are seeing tremendously positive results on our transit-oriented development program. That's where we're using our transit stations as catalysts to work with the private sector to improve neighborhoods, increase ridership, and actually bring some new money to the agency. That changes the conversation about MARTA, where instead MARTA's been seen as part of what's holding Atlanta back. Now we're having major Fortune 500 companies coming in saying they will relocate to Atlanta or have a bigger presence in Atlanta, but only if they're near a MARTA station. That would have been unheard of just a short time ago. And hopefully, a few years from now, people will be looking at MARTA as an iconic reason of what makes Atlanta special.
Thank you for moving to Atlanta, and thank you for moving Atlanta.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
MARTA has been keeping up to speed on the sustainability front as well. A majority of its buses run on compressed natural gas, and it's also instituted a water reclamation program. Over the course of 3 days last week, the company reduced the number of trains running for a period of 2 hours each day. MARTA is exploring ways to reduce energy and costs in its ongoing effort to achieve efficiency.